Welcome back, everybody, to a Not Funny Guys Presents Red Dwarf Rewatch. I am your host, Dr. John, and we are moving right along. We've reached the halfway point of Series 12. So, let's talk about Episode 3, Time Wave, directed and written by Doug Naylor, originally released on the 27th of October, 2017. Now let's get into this one. So this was a fun one, I have to say. It takes a lot of things to make me hate an episode of Red Dwarf, but this is actually quite a fun one in a very strangely unique way. So we open on the crew, they're on a moon, and Rimmer is claiming it on behalf of the Jupiter Mining Company. Apparently it's full of helium-7, which is incredibly valuable, super valuable. He names the moon Rimmer. He also names the star that it orbits Sunny Rim. Yes, the crew is taking this very well, just letting him indulge his arrogance. Crichton's back on Starbug. He warns them of an incoming solar storm, and they don't have time to mine things, so they gotta skedaddle. And the cat basically says, you know what, Rimmer, you find this so valuable, you just stay. He does grab up some sand into a little thing, and he runs out the rest of the crew. Now, they leave on Starbug, but they encounter not a solar storm, but something else, and they get hit by a wave. Crichton says that it's a wash from a time wave. And a time wave, apparently, we get explained here, is caused by an imploding black hole. And as things move back and forth, things from the past can end up in the present. Things from the present can get dragged back to the past, just like a wave on the beach. They can take things in, it can take things out. Crichton tries explaining this, but Rimmer is having a really hard time following any of it. So, like, basically, wave sweeps up the past and the present, and he gets thrown around. They need to avoid the next wave as much as they can. However, they now find that there is a ship, the SS Encomium, from the 24th century has now appeared. They apparently have a faster than light drive, FTL. But the ship is locked on course for planet Rimmer. They need to board the ship and stop this, because if it crashes into the planet with the helium-7, it will not only create an explosion that will destroy them, it will reach out far enough that basically it could destroy Red Dwarf and Starbug. So they really have to do this. Crichton is looking into the ship more as they approach it. Apparently they have a law aboard the ship that makes criticism illegal. And Rimmer seems kind of okay with this. They have a whole conversation about criticism and what's the point of it. Crichton tells them that they need to respect the laws and refrain from criticizing each other while they're on the ship. And apparently the law was passed because apparently they discovered that criticizers get a dopamine hit and become addicted to it. And in many ways, it creates problems. And so Cat calls Rimmer basically a junkie for this, that he loves criticizing people and they get a false sense of security, of superiority of other people. So Lister seems to be okay with this whole thing, but Crichton tells him, you really shouldn't be. You don't take criticism well. And apparently this is why he hasn't gotten to be a better guitar player, because he doesn't listen to any of them. So they dock with the ship, and when they come on board, the frames for the pictures on board are crooked, and the artwork is childlike, like what kindergartners and preschoolers make. No one criticized them, so no one has improved. They even see a video of a guy claiming be a fruit and then playing a flute. They then meet Ziggy Bryceman. Now, he doesn't claim to be the captain, but basically he is the captain. He's played by Jamie Chapman, and he is dressed up like a moron. However, interestingly enough, when I was looking into this and then looking at some stuff afterwards, it's really funny to think that he actually looks a lot like Vulva, played by David Williams, who is basically of Little Britain fame, when he was on the TV show Space with Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, where he plays a performance artist that Brian, one of their roommates or flatmates, was familiar with and worked with in the past. It's an uncanny connection in a weird way. I think there's a point here. But apparently, on the ship, no one is doing the job they should be doing. And they're all terrible at listening to anything because they don't listen to criticism. And the cafeteria is utter cuckoo nonsense. Rimmer sort of feels at ease with this kind of moronic worldview until a bad waitress basically pours coffee in his lap. Him and Lister, they didn't even order food, but they get food, calls them out and starts criticizing, and they're like, uh-oh, time to leave. So things are not going well for them. They are then cautioned by a pink-dressed policeman, a critic cop, played by Johnny Vegas. Love seeing him in here. I loved him particularly as the imaginary friend for Porridge in Moon Boy. That's it. Great. But wonderful character actor. They're basically pulled over, criticizing, get questioned. They do a breathalyzer where Lister scores very high on the criticizing. They're about to get a caution when the cat calls the crit cop stupid and goes off on him. He then gets like stunned, tased or something, and they're all taken into custody. They're in a cell when they are joined by what appears to be a Hannibal Lecter type character. At least he's dressed up, played by Joe Sims. He's in prison though for tutting. He gets life for it, and he's actually scared of them because they've done worse. They realize they've got to break out. They've got to divert the ship's course and to avoid a massive explosion with a collision. Crichton has this plan involving getting the helium-7 dust and mixing it with some stuff and blowing open the cell doors. They do this, but then they immediately get caught and chained. The crit cop tells them that this law against criticism was about trying to bring order to chaos, but it's also quite unnatural. In fact, the cop does a criticism of them and the law, and it's like he's discovering his erogenous zones or something. Really leans into it. He then gives them direction to the bridge and sort of having a change of heart when Ziggy shows back up and like takes them in custody. Gives the crit cop, can't criticize him, so it's like, you go about your business. He takes them to be drained, and apparently it's a criticism extractor machine. It removes the critical thinking via a machine and removes your inner critic as a result. So not only are you basically going to be more pliant and more sort of docile, but you also remove your inner critic and therefore achieve your total freedom. Rimmer basically says he doesn't want to be a hippie. The extraction of the inner critic is done first on him. Before he does that, Rimmer starts by basically quoting a Space Corps directive, and then in the middle of it tells Crichton, I love it, to shut up in advance for his response before correcting him. So Rimmer starts to get the training procedure. Crichton tells him to resist. Ziggy tells him to give in. His release of criticism causes the machine to overload and start to break. When it does, an evil scarred up version of Rimmer emerges. His inner critic from the machine. Rimmer and his inner critic then proceed to argue against each other. The crew says he doesn't do a very good job to the inner critic, because look at this, you made him make a fool of himself so many times. He did a bad job. If you had been doing a better job, he wouldn't have killed the entire crew of Red Dwarf. You didn't protect Rimmer. And Lister really lays into the inner critic, and finally Rimmer joins in about this, and then he defeats him, for now. Ziggy then realizes that his anti-criticism law is flawed, announces the end of this, and so the engineers go back to work at their proper jobs and actually divert the ship. Now they're on the ship, back in the cafeteria thing, talking about things that Ziggy's talking about things he could do to help Red Dwarf. FTL improving Crichton. No, it's artwork. It's his journey into space, his best thing, and they basically call it crap. He loses it. He screams at them and reinstates the law after they mock the childlike painting scene. Next time, we'll have Mechacracy. I think I'm saying that correctly. But I am looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to the end of Red Dwarf. And as I've said previously, I plan to do more. But we will be moving on officially. So, in the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, comment, all that fun stuff. If you want to write us directly and tell us some of your thoughts, you can write us at notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com. I tell you right now, Casey usually answers that email. So if you do write him, you can call him a smeghead. He probably won't get it, but I encourage you to do it. Yeah. No, I'm being real. But we'll move on to news radio. But like I said, we'll do some maybe YouTube shorts and some other fun stuff that will continue our immersive nature of Red Dwarf. And it's all to greatness. All right. So we'll be taking care of that. In the meantime, if you'd like to check out some other Not Funny Guys products, podcasts, we have our main podcast, Not Funny Guys Presents Off the Reels. You can see behind me, where we do movies, we do TV here. Over there, we're in the middle of doing the run of all the live action Batman theatrical releases. So we just have up recently right now our Batman 1989, Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson. We'll be moving on to Batman Returns next week and continuing on from there. So come check that out. If that's not your cup of tea, you can also check out my Not Funny co-host Casey and Eric. They do a podcast called Wrestling with the Horror of It All, where they discuss wrestling movies and they discuss, wrestling and horror movies. Let me get that right. You can check them out over there, or you can check out our Not Funny, our third podcast, which is myself and our Not Funny gal, Dr. Kristen. We have Not Funny Guys Presents Thinking About Thinking, where currently we have episodes this week. We have 2 episodes this week talking about anti-Semitism. So we talk about culture, AI, all kinds of things we're thinking about. And so you can check out that if that's something that floats your boat. But you should also be seeing more of our Not Funny Guys Presents Off the Reel episodes, because Casey has decided we should post these on YouTube for now until maybe we give it its own channel. So you might see a little bit of that. If you like that, let us know. You know where to reach us. But until then, remember, don't be a smeghead, keep it not funny, and I'll see you next time.